Hi folks, my name is Steve and today we are looking at Snapships Tactics. So this is a tactical skirmish game set in space where we are going to be building out these modular ships and getting in dogfights with our opponent. It's currently on Kickstarter, it's already funded, so let's take a closer look at the game, find out a little bit more about it and see if it's one for you, whether you can be backing this one or whether you can pass. So let's start off taking a look at our ship. So here we've got Sabre XF-23 fighter, so that's our ship right here. So let's take a little closer look at this card. This card is essentially the basics for our ship, right? So it kind of tells us the class of ship it is, tells us how many hull points it's got, how many action points it's got, which we'll talk more about in a minute. Ships come with a passive ability as well. And then it's got some start of turn actions that I'll come back to in a second. Down the bottom of the card tells us essentially how the card's going to be built out. So it's got to have a cockpit, it's got to have some thrusters, it's got to have some wings, right? All things that you would expect. But then it's got 3 spare parts to kind of tailor how we want, which is a big part of this game, right? It's a modular system. It's based on some already existing IP. These ships, I believe, are quite popular toys. I've got to be honest, I'm not familiar with them. But they're modular toys that you can kind of pull off the wings, pull off the weapons, and add and augment and add them on in different ways. And the game kind of borrows that concept to allow you to kind of build out your ship the way you want it. So, you know, we could replace these auto cannons with like a shotgun over here and things like that. That's the idea of the game, right? So let's then look now at gameplay and how it all works. So at the start of a turn, you're going to do some kind of forced actions and some admin, really. First thing you're going to do is you're going to reset your evasion counter, which I'll talk more about, but essentially it augments dice rolls and things like that. I'll come back to this one here, but this is essentially tells us how many cubes that we can vent, which is going to be an important part of taking our actions and things like that. And then we've got some forced drift movement. And like I said, this is based around movement rulers and range rulers. Quite nicely handled in the TTS mod, but essentially you would have, you know, a range ruler and then a slightly different movement ruler. And there's 2 types of movement. There's short and long. So for this here, we're going to kind of have to do a rotation, and then we're going to do a long move. So that would essentially take care of our start of turn. And then we're going to move in to the actual action phase and the bulk of the game, where we're going to be spending these action cubes to activate these various parts of the ship. And you can see on there what they need. So if we want to use this jump engine, we can either kind of do a long move and a U-turn. And it's going to cost us 3 blue cubes and 2 red. I'll come back to the red in 1 minute. Or we can do this shorter move that just costs us 2 blues. But we're essentially going to be spending these cubes to do these various actions. And this is important because this is essentially clogging up these locations that we want to activate, right? And some red cubes are going to come along as well. If we wanted to do this one down here, we're going to spend some red cubes. And these are heat, which anytime you use your weaponry or things like that, they're going to generate heat. And it's just another thing that is going to clog up that item, because if we've got any cubes on any of these cards, we can't use those cards. So that's where this vent action comes in at the start of the round, because this tells us we can vent up to 5 cubes, right? So maybe I'm going to vent these cubes off here and one other, so we vent this one. So we've got our jump engines back and our maneuvering fins. But in this situation, we haven't vented our auto cannons, which means going into the next round, going into our next action phase, we're not going to be able to activate our auto cannons. So maybe we would have left them on the jump engines so that we could activate our auto cannons. But this is quite a crucial part of the game, this idea of not just action points, but also kind of clogging up these various parts of your ship and slowing down your ability to kind of keep churning out the auto cannons or whatever cool weapon it is. You've got to be kind of mindful of venting this heat and these action points back off, which I think is quite nice. I think that's a cool idea and works quite well. But inevitably, as the game develops, you're going to be kind of getting in range of your opponent, moving up the board, and then you're going to have some combat. So again, we would spend a couple of cubes to activate our auto cannon over here, and then this tells us exactly, well, it tells us the firing arc, so we can kind of have a look, and yeah, we're just in range there for the firing arc. It tells us the range again, so this is range 2, so yeah, we've got plenty of space there. And then it tells us how many dice we roll and what we need to hit and what damage it does. So this tells us we're going to roll 4 dice. We're going to do 1 damage per hit, and we need a 2 plus the evasion level of our opponent. So in this case, it's a 3. So we grab our little dice pool, and these are 8-sided dice. Give them a roll. And there we go. So what did we need? We needed 5s. So we actually only hit with the 1 there. That was a bit disappointing. You'll notice there's blanks and there's crits. So that was quite a useful roll to demonstrate. Blanks are always a miss, regardless of any modifiers you might have. And crits are always a hit, again, regardless of any modifiers that might happen. And then you're going to adjust your hull points accordingly. And we're going to go back and forth like that until someone is destroyed. And that is essentially a game, guys. Some of the weapons work a little bit differently. Missiles kind of get placed onto the chassis of your opponent's ship, and they've got a round to try and destroy those incoming missiles, which works quite nicely. But essentially, we're going to go back and forth like this, rolling some dice and trying to take out our enemy. And guys, that is it. It's a nice, simple game. It's easy to pick up. It's easy to understand. You can kind of jump right into this one. So let's talk about who I think this is for. If it's good, what are some things you need to consider before you back this? So, guys, this is a simple tactical skirmish game, right? It's there's some decision making in how you build out the ship, and obviously as the game develops, I'm sure there's going to be loads of cards and there's going to be quite a lot of interesting decisions. But when you actually get onto the battlefield, movement is kind of limited. These are big old ships, right? And once you get into range and you've got this kind of forced drift movement anyway, it becomes a bit of a dice off. It certainly feels like there's not a lot you can do in terms of movement to outmaneuver your opponent. There's a little bit there, but you kind of meet in the middle and smash face. So what I would say is, if you're coming from a kind of tactical skirmish background, and you've played games like X-Wing, you know, I'm playing a lot of Marvel Crisis Protocol at the moment, which uses like scenarios and you're going to have point scoring essentially. There's a lot more crunch to those games, right? You know, so for instance, in Marvel Crisis Protocol, you're scoring points. So there's a lot of combat within that skirmish game. You're rolling plenty of dice, triggering different things, but also you're trying to score points. So there's more to the game than just the dice rolling. This is a little bit light on that, or at least right now, in the current state of the game, it feels a little bit light. You get into range and you're going to be spending these action points in firing off your biggest weapon and trying to do as much damage as quickly as possible. There's the dogfight feels light, right? It's again, X-Wing. I've played quite a lot of X-Wing, not played it in a long time, but it simulates a dogfight really well. You've got this simultaneous kind of action selection for your movement and things like that, and it feels like you're trying to outwit your opponent. You're trying to get to the flank. You're being outwitted by your opponent. This kind of just feels like, let's chuck some dice and see what happens. Now, that's not a bad thing if that's what you're looking for, right? And I'm not saying that this is a bad system particularly. What I'm saying is that I think it doesn't have enough crunch for me. I'm not feeling the interesting decisions. It's not resonating with me, and I'm not sure if you're coming from a kind of tactical skirmish background that this is going to do it for you. Feels a little bit like the cart has been put before the horse, which is, you know, this game has been built off some existing IP, right? So they have to use the ships that they've got, right? And these are big old ships, like I've said. It's they're not small, and when you start swinging these around a 3x3 map, there's not much opportunity for maneuvering and things like that. So and certainly if we got another couple of ships on the board, you know, things would get out of hand pretty quickly, I think, and there would not be much space for you to maneuver. It does suggest playing on like a 5x3 or 6x3 if you're going to have, you know, a kind of bigger 4 ships each kind of battle. But I still think even putting two or 3 ships on this 3x3 grid, you're going to run out of space pretty quickly. That said, I do think that this has some appeal, right? It's got some interest, and certainly if you've got younger gamers that you want to introduce a skirmish game to, I think this is probably a good jump off point. It's nice and simple because you've got these chunky ships. I think that is good. You know, everything's there to go. You're not going to damage these ships. I don't think. I've seen them. You know, other people have got their hands on physical copies and things, and they look like big chunky ships, and they look like a lot of fun to move around the board and things. So certainly for younger gamers, I think this is a really good introduction to skirmish games. And if you're already invested in these snap ships, if you're already buying them for your kids and maybe they're stuck in a cupboard, this might give those toys some new life, right, and some interest in life as your kids start to get to that like 10, 11, 12 age. I can imagine this being a lot of fun for them. So I think that is the market, right? I think that if you're that person, if you fall into that bracket, then absolutely check this out, because I definitely think there's a lot of mileage to be had here, and it's a good jump off point for maybe more strategic or deeper games like X-Wing and things like that. But for me right now, in its current state, it's probably a pass, and I think that may well be the case for a lot of people that are looking for a crunchier skirmish game. That's not to say that in a few years, as more content comes out and as they develop the game, it's not something I might revisit and change my mind on. But for now, yeah, I think it depends which camp you fall into as to whether this is a good fit for you, really. But overall, a fun little game. Definitely check it out if you fall into that bracket. Hopefully this has helped, guys. Check out the Kickstarter. I'll leave a link below. Let me know in the comments what you think as well. But yeah, until next time, guys, take care. Have a good one. Bye-bye.